AWS CloudFront Service hands-on demo, streaming distribution. So what are the objectives? We will first familiarize ourselves with the CloudFront console, create CloudFront RTMP distribution, and we will connect the RTMP distribution with the uploaded content, which is in S3, that would be the video content. And then we'll access the content through the CDN. But in order to access the content through the CDN, we'll have to make some minor changes in our web application. The HTML page will have to be changed to use the JW player, which is a RTMP player. Once we make the change, we'll go ahead and deploy the changed web application into AWS Elastic Beanstalk so that we can access the content through the CDN. So let's go ahead and do a live demo. So I'm back here at the CloudFront distributions. I would like to create a video distribution. I'm going to go ahead and say create distribution. So let's go ahead and create a distribution. But before we create the RTMP distribution, let's look at the S3 bucket to see where the videos are. Go ahead and click on S3 and look at the buckets. We have a bucket called JT-V, and that's where two videos are placed. We have a video called drivers for the cloud and a video called the cloud story. Those are the two videos that are there under the JT-V bucket. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a CloudFront distribution connecting to the bucket. Create distribution, RTMP distribution, give the bucket name. Notice in this case it's going to show you all the Amazon S3 buckets, and that's all it will show you, because when you create an RTMP distribution, it has to be backed by an S3 bucket. So I'm going to pick up JT-V. Everything else can be default. Create distribution, and that's going to go ahead and start creating the distribution. You will notice that with the streaming distribution or the RTMP distribution, the domain name or the URL is actually starting with an S, versus for the web distribution it starts with a D. So this tells me it's a streaming distribution. Now this distribution is still being configured, so it's going to take a while before we can start using it. In the meantime, as I mentioned to you, let's go ahead and make the change that needs to be done in the web application so that we can play streaming media. So let me switch over to Eclipse. I'm in my Eclipse IDE. If you look at the index.jsp page, in index.jsp page, right at the bottom of the index.jsp page, there's a link, Cloud Streaming Videos page, which links to jumbotron-videos.jsp. Let's look at the Jumbotron videos.jsp. That's the one that is going to be showing the RTMP streaming movie. This is a normal HTML page with the head and the meta sections and the link sections and then the script sections. Then you have the under the head, body, and then inside the body we have a big nav section, and then a couple of breaks, and then there's the div container section. This is where the real magic is taking place. Inside the main body we have a div which is called player. That's the ID for the div. And then there's a script. This is where we are bringing in the JW player, which is the video player for RTMP. And then there's also a line that you need to bring in with a script in which you assign the JW player key. This is something you're required to do as part of the JW player now. And then you have a script tag. This is where the real magic takes place. It says var player instance equals JW player. So it's basically creating an object which is a JW player object, passing to it the name of the ID. And then it says player instance dot setup, and then it passes to it a JSON object. The setup method takes a JSON object. The first field is file, which is really your RTMP file. Now there is a method to this madness. It is RTMP : and then there's the streaming content name. Now let's go ahead and figure out whatever streaming content name is and replace it. That's the streaming content name. Although it is in progress, I can surely use it in my code. So I'm going to go back to Eclipse, change it to whatever the new code is, and then it's /cfx/st/mp4 because it's an mp4 file. It's required that you put these 3 words separated by a slash right after the domain name, colon, the name of the file, which is the cloudstory.mp4. Okay, so I've done the changes. I'm going to save it. I'm going to export it. That's the WAR file. When you export it, it's going to build it automatically. I'm going to export it into my home directory. Finish. Okay, it's done. Now I would like to go back to my console and go to Elastic Beanstalk. Here's Elastic Beanstalk. Go to the environment and upload the newer version. Choose file, jumbotron.war, open, jumbotron-4, deploy, and it's being deployed at this point. So I've prepared myself to have an HTML page which is going to link to an RTMP streaming video that is being powered by the S3 bucket. So let me go ahead and wait for this to complete. Once this is complete, I actually, technically speaking, have to wait for the RTMP streaming to complete also. Alright, this is done. So I should be able to access the web application, but I don't really know if the RTMP streaming will work. It takes a little bit longer to actually get it set up and working, but we can try it. Before we do that, let's go back and see what the status of RTMP is. It's still not there yet. Okay, so finally the RTMP distribution is complete. As you can see, it's deployed. It took about 25 minutes for the RTMP streaming to complete. Now let's go ahead and try to access the application. This is the URL for the application, which has an HTML page in it. It's actually a JSP page that contains a link to a video. So let's go ahead and access the web application. There's the web application. And if I go ahead and click on the videos page, I see the video. When I hit the play button, it should play the video immediately because it's an RTMP streaming. There was instantaneous.
The Cloud Story. In this section, we will look at a fictitious character called Joe.
I'm going to pause it. If I move forward, it should immediately take me to that particular section or to that particular point in video, rather than downloading everything up to the point.
Will be to place.
There you go.
But you get my point. You get the drift. The idea here is that.
Pause. That's RTMP streaming distribution. So we were able to successfully create an RTMP streaming distribution. And if you look at the page source, you will notice that in the HTML page, or to be precise in the JSP page, I have a div section, and the div section is the location where the actual player appears. I brought in a couple of script tags, which brings in the JW player, and this is where I'm instantiating the JW player object, and then playing the video, which is the Cloud Story video. Okay, so let's get back to our slides. So in this section, we familiarized ourselves with the CloudFront console. We created a CloudFront RTMP distribution backed by an S3 bucket. We had already created an S3 bucket and we had uploaded the content over there, which were a couple of videos. Then we created a JSP page In the JSP page, we put an RTMP player, which is a JW player, and then we linked it to the streaming media. And then once everything was deployed, we were able to access the content through the CDN, which connected to the streaming media to download the content and play it in the browser.